Have vax will travel the U.S. to require jabs if you want to get in. The summer of hell in the skies. Why were the airlines so ill prepared to handle this rebound in travel? And Jeopardy closing in on its new host. Thursday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for August 5th. And as you can hear, I am Carlo Versano filling in. Well, I'm not filling in. I'm still here.
Yes, you never left.
You heard that chuckle. I got Baker Machado here filling in for Jill today. Baker, good to see you as always.
Great to see you too, Carla. Always happy to be on the podcast. I know ratings are going to tank because I'm on this show instead of Jill, but I'm always happy to be a part of the family here.
And we're always happy to have you. A little bit of housekeeping today. The podcast this week have been, the audio has not been great, and I just want to take responsibility for that. I'm in a new location, the work from home thing. I didn't have a good internet connection, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they're fixed. So it should be smooth sailing from here on out. I apologize to you guys for the last couple days of just having the audio be a little hinky.
Well, so I don't know if people are seeing the visual of this, but you're like broadcasting in like a basement bunker right now. So of course there's like a huge chance there was going to be some sort of technical problems in all of this.
There always is something, right? So anyway, we didn't put the pod on YouTube yesterday. It'll be back today if you like to watch it there. So Jill, as you can see, is out today and tomorrow. Baker will join us on the YouTube live chat tomorrow, since tomorrow is Friday. That's going to be exciting. Jill said that she's actually going to try and hop on if she's able. So that'll be 9 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube, youtube.com/Cheddar Now. We'll shout it out again tomorrow morning. So have
you guys ever had three people on the YouTube broadcast before? This might be a first, Carlo.
Oh, this will be a first, Baker.
Yes, potentially first and a last. Carlo, obviously we have a lot of news headlines to get to this morning, so let's dive right into them. Let's start here with the White House taking the first steps towards requiring almost all foreign travelers coming into the country to be vaccinated. That's part of a broader plan to start lifting the travel restrictions that currently ban much of the world from entering this country. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is calling for a moratorium on vaccine booster shots at least until the end of September. So that way poor countries where demand still outstrips supply can finally inoculate more of their populations. Now, countries in Africa, they've just given 5 doses per 100 people compared to the 85 doses per 100 people that we see here in North America. I think in some countries in Africa, Carlo, I think the vaccine level is less than 1% in a lot of countries right now.
Yeah, and the World Health Organization is just trying to get that number up even to 10%, which is still hard. I mean, there's really nothing more almost embarrassing, I think, than the fact that the United States bought up a ton of these vaccines, and now we literally cannot give them away because of how dysfunctional we've become as a country, all while poor countries are being decimated by the Delta variant, and they're literally begging for them. It's it's like so depressing. I don't even know what else to say. I want to try and elaborate for one thing, Baker, and I apologize for putting you through this because
no surprise.
But bear with me. I just want to elaborate on my current sort of like unifying theory on COVID, because we got some feedback. Some people have been saying that I was sounding insensitive to the current situation, or individualistic, or even selfish. And I just want to sort of talk about that for a second. It's not that I've become selfish. It's that I'm not going to let other selfish people ruin my life. That's sort of like where my head is at when it comes to the current state of the pandemic. And I think that there's a very important difference there. We all have to like tinker a little bit with our risk calculations when it comes to the Delta variant. And it's made harder because the scope of this, it just isn't really apparent. It's not fully apparent yet. But I still think of it like driving. And I know I've sort of used this metaphor before, but it's like driving is an inherently dangerous activity, right? But you can take steps, and we all do take steps to mitigate your risk. You can buy a safe car, you can wear your seatbelt, you can not drink and drive, you can not speed. But none of those things are going to help you if there's like a Mack truck coming in the other direction and it crosses the median at precisely the wrong moment, right? You're screwed. That's part of life. And you don't think about that every time you get into your car, or else if you did, you'd never leave your house, right? I'd be in my bunker here broadcasting to the world all day long. But I don't want to be that way. I want to be out in the world. I want to enjoy my life. And before mass vaccination, I sort of think of masks as like the seatbelt, right? But now that vaccinations are here and they're widespread, it sort of means that you don't need a seatbelt because you're driving around in an Abrams tank. And even if another car crashes into you, you're probably only going to get a bruise or a scrape or something. That's a majorly mixed metaphor there, and I appreciate that. But again, my risk profile is different than yours, Baker, and it's different from Jill's, and it's different from you, the listener. And mine, frankly, is different than it was just 2 months ago because I have an infant now. And to be perfectly honest, this is something that Becky and I have clashed on, this issue of, how cautious should we be given that we have a little baby who can't be vaccinated. But to me, honestly, like there's bigger worries in my life when it comes to the baby, right? I worry about, yesterday I was worrying about pesticides. That to me is a bigger risk that she's going to inhale some chemical that's being sprayed on the lawn at this house. When I'm driving, I now get really stressed out with her in the back seat because, a misjudgment on my part puts her little helpless life at risk. And that terrifies me as opposed to the old days. I drive around and it's like, okay, if I get in an accident, I'm the one who could be hurt. Now it's more than me. Anyway, I'm just sort of trying to come to terms with like how my general risk calculus has to change now being as a parent. But that's sort of like another topic, and I don't mean to go off on that. But one last thing, I just want to say there's some people who cannot get vaccinated for medical reasons. So that's a very small number, and I obviously don't want to lump them in with those who don't want to get it because they think it's more dangerous than actually getting COVID. It's just that this is life, right? All of life is risk management. It is a constant cost-benefit analysis that you're making as you go through your day. And it changes based on where you are as well, right? In New York City, the numbers continue to be very low. And also, every single person that I know is vaccinated. So my risk profile is mitigated because of that. I would feel very differently if I lived in Florida or Alabama. And my feelings also may shift if we even actually end up getting a worse variant this fall.
Listen, Carlo, I think your thesis is really spot on because now I think because the Delta variant has changed everything now because I feel like in many ways because there's going to be a huge, at least 30% of the population that will refuse to get vaccinated no matter what. There is still a small sliver of people that you can convince to get the vaccine, and we're seeing those people now. That's why you're seeing these the vaccination numbers tick up just a little bit. But in many ways, the risk management theory here I think is spot on because these, and the CDC has already said that, you're expecting these variants to mutate, and based on the vaccines, you're going to have a certain level of protection against them, and you still might have a lot more of these breakthrough cases. My husband and I have been having this conversation because we're going to Provincetown this weekend. And Provincetown, if you haven't been plugged into the news, had a huge cluster outbreak. Luckily, over 90% of the people that caught COVID were vaccinated, but so for instance, friends of mine who were both vaccinated, went to Provincetown, went back home to Los Angeles, caught COVID in Provincetown, gave it to their 2 kids, who then gave it to their grandparents. Everybody luckily is okay, but that just goes to show that the COVID's going to be a part of our lives regardless of if you're vaccinated or not. And so you have to take your own risk assessment of how much you want to be exposed to it or not. My husband and I have decided we're still going to Provincetown, but we're going to be wearing our masks much more than we would have been maybe a month or so ago. But those are sort of the calculations now that you're going to have to do for the rest of your life because these variants are going to continue to mutate and they're going to have different responses to the vaccines as a result of that.
Exactly. And the same way that we have learned to live with the flu, we're going to have to learn to live with this virus. And I'm just not going to let it, change my life after I've got my vaccine, at least for right now. Again, if we get one of these variants that breaks through the vaccines in a much more serious way, I will then reassess.
Totally. Let's move on to some of the other big stories. District attorneys here in Manhattan and several other New York counties, Carlo, have now started the process of gathering information for possible criminal investigations that into the conduct of Governor Andrew Cuomo. The New York governor losing his last bastion of supporters. This as he faces the likelihood of impeachment proceedings in the state assembly. He has not been seen in public since Tuesday. That, of course, when he denied the allegations in that bombshell attorney general report here in New York, Carlo.
Oh, God, you'd think that any other politician would probably have been hightailed it out of the governor's mansion by now. Yeah, but I think he probably would have been able to hold on if that report determined that there was maybe a single sexual harassment claim, maybe even 2,
but not
maybe
11.
even 3, 11. that's you're done. And also the fact that it includes allegedly him harassing a female state trooper who was assigned to his protective detail, which is just sort of beyond gross.
Oh yeah.
The only thing with Cuomo is he's always wanted to win a fourth term, right?
Yes.
Because his father, Mario
Yes.
Cuomo, famously lost his fourth election to George Pataki, who was like a nobody at the time, back in 1994. So that's sort of, I think, what's keeping him and his ego in office at this point. I still think it's wishful thinking on his part. It's hard for me to imagine he lasts through the weekend, although I've been wrong on him in the past. But the bigger question is, like, why do the politicians in this state, why are they so bad? Why, like, they're either corrupt,
Yes.
corrupt, incompetent, or sex pests, or some version of like two or of the three. Like, why can't we just get somebody
Rational,
in this
normal
state?
people?
Yes, this is an important state to the country's economy.
Yes.
Like, it would be nice to have a functioning governor every once in a while.
So, how this plays out is going to be really interesting because you're right. He is incredibly stubborn. He is defiant. If anything, his mindset clearly, Carlo, is because there's been so many other scandals involving the governor's office that, we just forget about it as time moves on. And he clearly has his sights set on, running for re-election for that fourth term, something that his dad never got. That clearly is not going to happen. By the way, you also have to think the person that is laughing right now at all of us is Cynthia Nixon, who is right now filming Sex and the City's reboot, minus Samantha, because she told us all about this. She told us that this was who Andrew Cuomo was right during the entire primary season when she was campaigning against him for governor. Now, we should note the state assembly is essentially thinking potentially late September, early October, potentially you might have articles of impeachment against him. There hasn't been too many governors historically that have been thrown out from impeachment. I mean, you have to go back many decades when the last time that this happened. I don't see him seeking another term. I see Kathy Hochul, his lieutenant governor, potentially filling in and taking over by the end of the year. But how he chooses to go out is going to be interesting when it comes to his political legacy here, because he could resign, which of course everybody, including the state Democratic Party, is asking and pleading for him to do. But the problem is he's stubborn enough and his ego is so big that I don't see him doing that. So I think we are going to get to the impeachment proceedings, which will throw him out.
No.
I really think that's going to happen here.
That's possible.
All right, let's move on to Tokyo. Spoiler alert, the U.S. men's basketball team came from behind to beat Australia. They're going to play in the gold medal game, while the U.S. women's soccer team early this morning, guys, huge spoiler alert, just beat Australia. Huge news for the ladies. They get the bronze medal just moments ago. They won. Now, on the track field, Team USA failed to qualify for the men's 4x100 meter relay that after botching a baton pass, the latest mishap in an event that the U.S. men had dominated for decades, Carlo.
My favorite Olympic story of the day goes in the water. We've got American 19-year-old Nevin Harrison. She just won gold in the first ever women's canoe 200-meter sprint. She was told by a doctor when she was 14 years old. She was like a big athlete, one of those teenagers who plays like every single sport. She was told that she'd never play any sports again because she had hip dysplasia. 5 years later, she's winning a gold medal for her country in a brand new event. That's the kind of Olympic story you love to hear, right?
So I don't know if you've been watching skateboarding. It is growing up, I love it too. Growing up, I used to play Tony Hawk, the video game, which was like one of my favorite games. This is literally watching that. I don't know if you saw the other day in the women's competition in skateboarding, a 12 and a 13-year-old, one from Japan, one from Britain, won the silver and the bronze in the skateboarding competition. And everyone was like, how is a 12 and a 13-year-old competing in the Olympics? And then we had to go through the record books. Apparently, the youngest person ever to medal in the Olympics was like back in the 1890s. A Greek gymnast at 10 years old won like the bronze medal.
Apparently, that's amazing.
Which is so crazy. There was also apparently like I think a swimmer from the United States, which it has the record for being the youngest person ever to win gold. I think there were 12 or 13 also. But just still incredible that A, we have skateboarding that is now an Olympic sport, and B, 2 of the 3 place finishers are under the age of 13.
Well, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, I used to skateboard a little bit in my day. Not that I was any good at all, but like that's the kind of thing that you're not doing that as you get older. Like it's way too talk about risk management.
Oh,
like you're not gonna
Could you imagine? Could you imagine me and you on a skateboard now? I would have so many like pieces of body armor on me if I was like on a skateboard right now, because I would not trust myself to go like 5 feet on that.
Yeah, you can't be in your 30s coming to work with like a broken arm, and they're like, "What happened?" Like, I missed that kick flip.
Yes. All right. So moving on, Carlo. So big question, Carlo. Without looking, do you know when your passport expires? I do on mine, and I'll tell you the story afterwards.
No, I don't.
But even if it's within the next year, if it expires, you might want to start the renewal process now. According to the State Department, it's now taking as long as 6 months now for Americans to get their passports renewed or to even get their first ones issued. Pre-COVID, the wait times range from 6 to 8 weeks for regular applications and 2 to 3 if you pay the expedited fee. Now, even expedited applications taking up to 3 months now, Carlo, to get processed. Ooh, what a headache.
Yeah. Majorly. I think they give you 10 years, I think, right? So I feel like
Yes,
I got a
10
new
years, 10
passport
years.
within the last couple of years. So I think
yeah.
I'm going to be good for this one. But by the way, do you know babies need passports?
Yes, I do know. I do know. Weird. I know it's a weird thing to know, but yes, I do know that. I'm like the expert now on passports because I've had a couple really terrible stories with passports.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. I'm going to have to get a passport for Francesca.
I know.
I mean, like they're going to take a picture of her, which like she can't even hold her head up.
Yes, could you imagine going to Kinko's to get that photo? That's going to be amazing.
What a racket that is. Anyway, the reason why this is all happening, why else, right? The combination of pandemic staffing issues, then you've got all these backlogs. A lot of people just let their passports lapse during all the travel bans since nobody was going anywhere, so they're rushing out to get them renewed. That's the reason for these backlogs. State Department even had to suspend online bookings because scammers were using third-party bots to book appointments and then resell them to travelers.
Oh, yeah.
Again, so depressing. I saw one story of a guy who flew from Atlanta to Chicago just to snag an open appointment at one of the 26 passport offices. And by the way, those passport offices, there's no standardization, of course, right? Why would there be? So some of them accept walk-ins, some of them aren't even open. It's a gigantic mess. And you can't even call your congressperson, which is typically what you do if you're coming up on a hard international flight and you don't have a passport. They usually can get it done for you. They can't do that anymore because they're backed up, which is a shame because that's really the one thing that Congress people are good for.
Oh, yeah, totally. No, listen, all of those processes I went through at one particular point. So years ago, my then boyfriend, but now my husband at the time, were going to France for a vacation. Unbeknownst to me, he was about to propose to me when we were in France. And I didn't know that on your passport, if you're traveling internationally to specific countries, like in France, you have to have 6 months on your passport before it expires, before they'll let you in. I never knew that. So my passport had like 4 months left before it expired, and they would not let me board the plane because of that. And my boyfriend like had, like all these things that we were going to be doing planned out of where he was going to propose and all of this stuff. And we couldn't even go on the flight. And so I had to find, an appointment a few days later, pay the expedited fee to like get a new passport and all of that. It is such a headache and it is such a hot mess that I can. Yeah. So now I know all about passport expiration dates, all of that stuff better than anybody. But it is a nightmare, and you're so right. A lot of people, as a last resort, you call or email your congressperson to help you out.
We had one of those from hell when we were coming back from our honeymoon. Becky brought the wrong passport that didn't have her visa in it. So we were in Portugal, and they were like, you're not an American citizen. Like, you cannot go into the country. So she had to fly to Toronto. My father, God bless him, drove up to Toronto with her passport, picked her up, drove her back. It was a whole
nightmare.
It was a nightmare, but hey. And still married, so it's all good.
Yes, exactly. And look, and by the way, I still got proposed to on that trip to France. It all worked out just fine. It was
That's
just in
the stuff you remember.
Yes, exactly. It was like in a random restaurant that we couldn't get a reservation to. So yeah, it was perfect. Speaking of travel, Carlo, the summer of misery in the skies, it gets worse, it feels like, by the day. Spirit Airlines has canceled 40% of their flights today. That after canceling half of their flights on Wednesday. The budget carrier dealing with a perfect storm of disruptions, IT outages, bad weather, and worker shortages all coming during peak demand. American Airlines also has canceled hundreds of flights earlier this week, and that's partially due to the inability to book flight crews during layovers after outsourcing that process. I mean, my God, right now, Carlo, to be a flight attendant in this country is, they're doing God's work at this point. I'm sorry.
They should all get like congressional medals
of
freedom, seriously, especially after that story yesterday about the guy duct taping that guy to the seat. Oh my God!
I just saw that video this morning on TMZ about the guy who was belligerently drunk, grabbing some of the breasts of some of the flight attendants. By the way, Frontier Airlines reacted so poorly on that, they basically almost fired these flight attendants because of this. And then everybody saw the video and they're like, oh, I guess the flight attendants were doing their job here.
I would have been okay if they threw that guy off the plane.
Yes.
There's some flight attendants who have actually been sleeping in airport baggage claims with American Airlines, according to their union. What really, it's like everything else, right? Industry analysts are in agreement that what happened here is airlines just way overshot the mark. They really cut overhead during the early days of the pandemic, and they just sort of failed to anticipate the rebound in demand, as I think everybody did. Even though, again, this is an industry that got $50 billion in bailout money. So it's like it's really hard. It's really hard ever to have any sympathy for airlines. I mean, specific airline workers, yes, but like the airlines as a whole, it's really hard now when it's like you guys got all this money. Like we should at least be able to fly without feeling like we're cattle. Right. But So anyway, maybe this will be the thing that finally leads to like a real passenger bill of rights in this country, which we can only hope. We still don't really have.
Well, Carlo, getting back to our earlier conversation about risk management, there is a huge concern about what the Delta variant, the Lambda, the Gamma, all those variants are what they're going to do for at least the rest of the year. My sister-in-law, because of the variant, canceled their huge flight to Hawaii next week. I have other family members who are canceling flights that are coming up in the next little bit because they just don't know how bad things are going to get with these COVID cases. I mean, we're almost reaching 100,000 new COVID cases now. Who knows what it's going to be like in the fall? Dr. Fauci's even saying right now, he's blowing the whistle, saying the fall could be a really tumultuous time for this country. He's expecting 100,000 to 200,000 COVID cases come the fall. So what happens to the airlines then? Because all of a sudden they're seeing a huge peak in demand. I think I saw somewhere like 6 to 8 million people went through TSA security checkpoints over the last week. Does demand then fall back down again in the fall when people don't want to travel because COVID cases are rising? So the airline industry is just in this weird sort of predicament now where things are hot now, but then they're going to change. But then everybody's being treated so terribly on these flights also. It's just a mess.
Right. All of these things could be solved if everybody just got vaccinated and we could go back to normal.
I know. You would think that would be the easy way out in all of this, but alas. Let's talk about a story that is near and dear to my heart as a Jeopardy super fan. They might have finally now found their host, Carlo. Variety reporting this morning that the quiz show's executive producer, Mike Richards, is in advanced negotiations to become Alex Trebek's permanent replacement. A final decision, though, has not been made, but execs at Sony Television were said to be super impressed with Richards' on-air manner and his experience as a veteran game show producer. This, of course, as he vaulted over LeVar Burton and Ken Jennings, who likely were the frontrunners in all of this. Now, again, Carlo, as a Jeopardy super fan, watch it every single night, haven't missed an episode forever. I even still DVR Jeopardy episodes to watch. By the way, David Faber at CNBC has been hosting this last week. He's not been too bad either. I was shocked at this news about Mike Richards potentially becoming the host. And that's not to say Mike Richards did a bad job, because he actually did a really good job. He's got the timing well. He knows the game inside and out. He's been there. I think he's been, according to Variety, 4,000 episodes of the show as the executive producer. So he's super experienced, but he was not a name nobody was talking about. Earlier on, it seemed like this was Ken Jennings' job to lose. He wanted this job really badly. And then you saw the social campaign for LeVar Burton, who also wanted this job really badly as well. I thought for the last few weeks, this was LeVar Burton's to lose, because I felt like the campaign was so good to get him to become Jeopardy host, and it seemed like his ratings were doing really well also. So the fact that Mike Richards is going to be the pick here, not any of the celebrity appearances that were here for the summer, really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think it's going to upset a lot of people too. I mean, there were these big social media campaigns for Burton and some of the others, and to give it to the EP, I think that's going to definitely shock a lot of people. I wonder though, is it's just like a trial balloon? Sometimes they do these things where they leak it to the press, so it's like see how the reaction is, and then they're like, okay, we're not going to pick this guy. Right. I wonder, but he's clearly got the expertise, I guess, as an EP of. And
I'm glad you said that this is a trial balloon, because Sony was quick to basically come out at that Variety story and say, listen, we're in negotiations with a bunch of different people. He hasn't gotten the job yet. So it gives you the indication that this is a trial balloon to see what the reaction is, and then you sort of get, the answer there. But look, Jeopardy, I had this conversation with my husband, because these are the conversations we have at our house. I said they should basically have these celebrity guest hosts during the summer. Have Mike Richards do the Tournament of Champions and all this stuff. But then it got such a good campaign and good ratings, and it was fun watching all these different hosts from Anderson Cooper to Katie Couric to Sanjay Gupta do the hosting. And my husband said, no, that doesn't work, because shows like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, they're comfort television that people know 100% what they're getting when they're watching. And it's the same thing over and over again, and that's how these programs work. And so if you're Mike Richards, who's familiar to the audience in terms of he knows the program, he knows the show, I think it's just the safe choice for them at this particular point.
That's actually a very interesting point. You're right. That's a good point that your husband made. You're right, because you're not turning on Jeopardy. You're like, oh man, what is going to happen tonight?
I know, right?
It's like, no, you're turning it on because like you're waiting for dinner and like you want to watch Jeopardy for half an hour and answer some questions. So you're right. I think that's a good call.
Okay, finally, this was a big one yesterday, Carlo. Rihanna, Riri, she is now officially a billionaire. That thanks to her extraordinary profitable cosmetics line. Forbes estimates that Rihanna now worth $1.7 billion, making her the richest female musician in the world. And this is a big one, the second richest female entertainer, only behind Oprah. The vast majority of Riri's wealth comes from her 50% stake in Fenty Beauty, which she launched back in 2017 to instant, huge success. And if anything, she is a trailblazer in the beauty category, Carlo, because she essentially created a large swath of different of lines of different colors and shades for a variety of different women out there. Typically in the makeup industry, you have just basically like a few different shades. She basically expanded that, and that forced the competitors out there to do the exact same. Her Fenty Beauty line, Carlo, makes more money than Kylie Jenner's lip kits, which we should note put Kylie Jenner in the billionaire status. It makes more money than Kim Kardashian's beauty lines and her shapewear lines as well. And Kim Kardashian, according to Forbes, also a billionaire. So congratulations to Riri. I'm just worried now we're never going to get music from her ever again now.
We're never getting a new album. That was my main takeaway from this. Not to take away from her, and also she's a self-made billionaire. Right?
Yes.
I mean, say what you will. Like Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, there was like this debate, were they really self-made?
True.
Rihanna was just like some girl from Barbados who became a performer and leveraged that into becoming this amazing businesswoman. And she was really ahead of the ball when it came to sort of monetizing inclusivity in cosmetics. So I'm not going to take anything away from her. Good for her, and I don't blame her for not performing again.
No, listen, she's going to now do it as like a side hustle. Like you and I would be like Uber drivers as like a side hustle. She's, just putting out music. And again, when you're now in basically the same company now as Oprah Winfrey, I mean, my God, kudos to her.
Yeah, good for her. Riri. Still, you could put out a song, maybe like one song.
Well, look, her song, work. I mean, that's what she's doing, man.
Oh, man. Okay, well, we went long as we always do, Baker. Sorry, guys, but we will do it again tomorrow.
Yes, we will.
Baker, great to see you as always. Thank you, guys. And again, audio issues should be better. That's what you need to know. Thursday, August 5th. Have a good day.